Hello, this is Julie Hogue with Vegetarians and Meat Lovers Split Table Recipes podcast, where I podcast about food, cooking for more than one diet. Hence the name of my cookbook, One Dish, Two Diets, where I have recipes for people that are in families or who have to cook for groups that are both vegetarian and meat eaters. You don't want to be a short order cook, right? There are ways to get around it. And that's what my cookbook and my podcast is all about. Because we all have different needs and desires when it comes to food. But the person doing the cooking has to figure out how to mesh all that, right? I've been doing this for a long time. I became a vegetarian when I was a teenager. Actually, I really became the cook as a teenager of my family. And at that time, I was a vegetarian then as well. But my sister and my dad still ate meat. So I had to figure out, how am I going to do this, right? So just being more mindful. And these are things that have been developing within me for years. Now, I have 3 children and my husband, they all eat meat and I don't. And I'm the cook of the house for the most part. My husband likes to grill meat, which actually fits quite well because then I can make the rest of the meal. But for instance, sometimes you're feeding a group of people and you're not grilling. And so this recipe is a pasta dish. It's a hybrid 2-dish veggie pasta bake. One pan is vegetarian and one has meatballs. And so this is for a large group of people. You could scale it down and do half and half in a 9x13 pan if you wanted to. This one is designed to feed like 6 people, 6 to 8 people. 6 people, you'd have leftovers. You could feed possibly up to 10 if you don't have leftovers. Maybe 12 if you're doing some other side thing with it, depending on how much you take out per portion. Now, this one is a pretty simple recipe. I don't consider it to be complicated. It's really good, though. I have to say it's really good. And it grew from a recipe I found online, and I completely reshaped and molded it and turned it into what I call a hybrid recipe, where it looks at how does one feed 2 different diets within one meal without making it an excessive amount of work. So this one, I'll let you hear how it's made, and you'll see how it's just about being more intentional and mindful about where and when you're adding meat. And that way you can create a meat portion and a meatless portion. You could do this in one pan, like I've said, if you want to scale it down for fewer people. But this particular recipe is meant for 2 9x13-inch pans or dishes. I like to use the glass baking dishes. You could use metal. I don't think that really matters. Okay, so what do you need, right? What do you need? You need 16 ounces of penne pasta, which you're going to cook to al dente. You need 2 jars of marinara sauce. I use the big ones, not ginormous, but just enough. You don't want to use the small ones, in other words. This isn't an absolute thing, but you just want 2 jars of marinara sauce. You want 1 of the big cans of crushed tomatoes. These are like the big cans you find, and I believe most grocery stores have them. I'll put the exact ounces down in the podcast show notes where the recipe will be, so you can have that. It's a little bit flexible, obviously. And then you want 1 22-ounce bag of frozen meatballs, and you're going to cook those according to the package instructions. You don't have to overcook or anything. I just cook them as the package tells you. 4 cups of shredded mozzarella cheese, 3/4 cup grated Parmesan cheese. That can be divided. 2 cartons of Bella mushrooms, washed and sliced. 1 zucchini chopped. 1 medium onion chopped. 1 red pepper chopped. Red bell pepper, that is. 3 tablespoons olive oil. 2 tablespoons Italian seasoning. Sea salt and black pepper, which will be sprinkled to taste, and 2 big handfuls of fresh baby spinach. Okay, so I already said in the beginning that you're going to cook your pasta to al dente, and then you're going to do your meatballs cooked. So those things get cooked separately and then just set aside. They can be cooking while you're getting the other things going. So you're going to chop the onions, the red pepper, and the zucchini. And in about 1 to 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil, you're going to saute them until they are soft. And then you're going to take your drained pasta and your cooked meatballs and have those kind of on the side. While you are also, I usually, what I do is I take out those vegetables, the sauteed onion, red pepper, and zucchini, and then I add that to the pasta and the marinara sauces and the crushed tomatoes. And then I cook the mushrooms by themselves. And you don't have to do it this way. That's just the way I did it because I did have the mushrooms a little bit separate. And then there's a reason why I did that. It's because also, again, accommodating my oldest son oldest and youngest who don't really like mushrooms. So I did the mushrooms separately so that I could have them be separate, not mixed in the entirety of it. So I could leave portions of the pan without mushrooms. You don't have to do this, but I don't know. I guess I'm a mom and I like to make it so that they like it. And I'm not going to force them to eat mushrooms if they don't like them. Okay. So you're going to take, like I said, the drained pasta, the jars of marinara, the crushed tomatoes, and the sauteed veggies in a pot. I just used the pot I cooked the pasta in because why make more dishes? Stir that all together. And then you're going to add your 2 handfuls of spinach and stir. And then you're going to let it sit. And this helps the spinach wilt within the heat of all that stuff. And stir it again. I just stir it real well. And you're going to add the Italian seasoning and salt and pepper to the veggie sauce pasta mix and stir that. And then you're going to take the mixture that you just stirred and you're going to put it into 2 9 by 13 inch baking dishes, probably about 1/4 of the mixture per pan, if that makes sense. So just kind of cover the bottom. This isn't going to be rocket science or exact. You cover the bottom of each pan with about 1/4 of that mixture and spread it out. And then you're going to take the mushrooms, half the mushrooms for the vegetarian platter or pan, whatever you want to call it. I guess it's a pan. And then half for the meat one. And again, you can modify this like I did if someone doesn't like mushrooms and just kind of sweep them off a little section and then keep track of where in the pan the non-mushrooms are. You can see that obviously when you cut into it too. And so then you're going to spread those mushrooms and then 1.5 cups of shredded mozzarella cheese over both pans and sprinkle 1/2 cup grated Parmesan cheese across both pans. And then you're going to take your meatballs, and I took the meatballs and just put them across one entire pan, just kind of pushing them in there and spreading them. You don't have to push them too far, but kind of laying them on top. And then, of course, you don't add them to the vegetarian one. And then you're going to spread the remaining pasta veggie sauce mixture across both pans. So then again, that's your other 1/4 and 1/4, right? So in the end, both pans have about half of that mixture. And then you are going to sprinkle the remaining cheese across both pans and bake it at 375 covered in foil. And I generally spray that foil with some olive oil, cooking spray, just to try to keep the cheeses from sticking to it when you peel it off. Cook it for about 50 to 55 minutes or until the sauce is bubbling and the cheese is melted. You can check it. Ovens cook at different rates, obviously. Allow it to cool and enjoy. And so this is really, I love all the sauce in this, and it's got all those veggies. And so when I've made it, you could have a salad on the side, but you don't necessarily need that either. I did ciabatta bread spread with butter, and I did Italian seasoning and rosemary dried. Those are both dried leaves, and I sprinkled that, and then I just roasted it on the broiler, under the broiler, the low broiler, just to make them like crisped up, and I served it with that, and I've done that multiple times. Sometimes I add cheese, sometimes I don't, so that's a great way to do things. And if you have any leftover, I've done this too. If you have any of your bread left over, you can turn those into croutons by tossing them with a little olive oil and putting them in your air fryer. And you can make your own croutons. That's what I like to do with like leftover bread. You can just use regular bread too. But if you have leftover like garlic bread or something like that, you can turn them into croutons with your air fryer. It works great. So we had this the other night, and my son and his girlfriend ate it with us. They had an amazing story. So we had this massive storm in Minnesota on Sunday, and they were coming back from a trip. And what's really exciting about this trip is my son went to where she was on vacation visiting her family and surprised her with a proposal of marriage. She was totally surprised. They had talked about marriage, so it wasn't like out of the blue, but she didn't know, she did not expect him to fly down there. So he just appeared in the middle of a family event and proposed to her. Like, how exciting is that? So now we're on this fast track of, okay, we're having a wedding soon. And so they got stuck in the storm and they had to drive. They ended up driving back and their flights got canceled because of the storm. And then they had to drive back. And they were driving back in a rear wheel convertible in snow. Like, this is so bad. They had to stop and get somewhere to stay for the night. So when we had this meal, they were finally making it back to Minnesota. And this was the meal that we had when they came to the house to share about all their adventures and the proposal, surprise proposal, and all of that. So it was fun to have a meal. And I hadn't even, that's the funniest part to me, is that they were supposed to arrive several days earlier. So I just had this meal planned for that day. And it turned out being the day when she was there. So I needed, more vegetarian portions. And it just happened to be the day that they ended up arriving back in Minnesota and coming to talk to us. So it worked out so well. I was like, it was like practically meant to be, right? Because I could have had something totally different planned for the meal, and this worked out really well. It's a great meal for, like I said, when you have someone who wants vegetarian portions and someone who wants meat. How do you do it? And you could switch out your meats. You could do browned ground beef or pre-cooked pork or chicken. That's so versatile. So this is just kind of like one example of a meal that I do where I'm just really planning ahead. Where is that meat going to go? So the initial, pasta and veggie mix and the marinara and the crushed tomatoes, that's all created together. So it's less work. Then you split it into 2 pans. It's so easy. It's a great way to make a split table recipe because you're not really doing extra work. You're not adding the meat. Like some people might add the meats to the sauce. Well, then that's a lot harder. You could divide the pasta, tomato, veggie mix and add the meat in and stir it. But this is just so much easier because you just make it one big vat of it and then you're just laying meat, cooked meat, in the middle between the 2 layers of the pasta mixture. It's just an easy way to keep the meat separate. You aren't adding any meat juices. You're not trying to pick through it. You're not trying to avoid meat chunks. And you're not doing extra work because literally all you're doing is splitting it into 2 separate pans. And so it's really easy. So those are the kind of meals that I like to do. And it's just being thoughtful and mindful. Where am I going to add the meat? How am I going to add it? Can I group these things together as much as possible so I'm doing less work? And keeping meat pieces big is another way to do that. Or just, you can do it in the same pan as long as you're not going to get what I call meat drift, meat juice or meat drift over there. I try to generally do something where it's a little bit less than where you'd want the meat to be so that even if it does drift a little bit during cooking, it's going to basically be away from the vegetarian portion. I know people that won't do that because they're afraid of meat juice getting over there and they don't want anything to do with meat juice. But if you leave a big enough space and it's not really super over liquidy hot dish or recipe, you should be fine and not have the meat drift. The meat drift. Dreaded words for the vegetarian and the vegan. This is not a vegan recipe. I don't want to confuse people. Obviously, it's got dairy. You could try it with a non-dairy cheese. I have not done it because I do eat dairy as a vegetarian. I'm a lacto-ovo-vegetarian, meaning I eat dairy products and eggs, cheese. So this is the recipe, and that's the crazy, exciting things happening in my life, and it's going at fast speed, and it's going to be a really busy time. We have an engagement party and things are already planning. They're really far in planning already because they had all this time to talk on their drive because they were driving for like hours and hours and hours, right? So it's they've really gotten a lot done in a very short amount of time. So that's pretty amazing. Well, thanks for listening to this and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you check out my other recipes in my cookbooks. I also have a quiche cookbook that has a lot of hybrid recipes in it as well, and all across this podcast. And on my website, juliehogwriter.com, I have more, so you can find more recipes there. I'm also an author. I write YA contemporary romance, and I have 2 books out, Cabin Crew and Hungry Heart. The Hungry Hearts, the sequel, then book 2 for that is actually going to be coming out probably next winter. So I'm excited about that. Well, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy your food. Food is meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be celebrated and enjoyed with others. Not that you can't make it alone for yourself, but it's a fun thing to do in a group, and it's a way to bond, right? I think eating a meal with others is a way to bond with people. And I think we all know this because we all like to go out to eat with people. We like to talk. It's a place to, talk to each other and be real and be in this world of so much online stuff. We got to have that. We can't lose that. We got to keep our community between each other and keep it alive. Well, thank you so much for listening to this, and I hope you have an amazing day. Easter's coming up. Are you planning your Easter meal yet? This is a funny story. I got to tell you this story too. So we were set to feed 60 people on the robotics team. My youngest son is in the robotics team, and we said we were going to do tacos, right? Well, they had a change in their plans. So I had already bought all the things for 60 people, right? All of a sudden, they only needed food for 25. And then they needed food for 20 because they were finding out they didn't need the kids there. So they don't want to make them just be sitting around doing nothing if their part of the team is not doing things and not, working on something. Why take up their time and have them there? So it totally shrunk from 60 people down to 20. And I think it was even less by the time we saw them. And so we have all this meat because we were doing tacos for 60 people, right? All these tortillas. I bought 120 tortillas so everybody could have 2, and then some crunchy ones because someone is gluten-free. So I had some of the crunchy tacos shells there. We have so many tortillas. Like the salsa and stuff is fine because you can leave it sealed and it lasts forever. But the tortillas are the problem. I'm like, okay, I've never frozen tortillas. So we're going to try this and see if it works. I'll come back and give you my review, whether I think it works or not. So I've frozen a couple of the packages. But I'm like, what am I going to do with all this? And sour cream, because unfortunately we forgot to bring the 2 giant vats of sour cream. Like, okay, maybe I use this stuff for Easter. I make these great pickle wraps that my family just adores. And again, this is something you make vegetarian and with meat. It uses ham sandwich meat. And I have this recipe on my podcast. I think I have it on a podcast. I do have it on my website. And so I'm like, you know what? For Easter, I'm making pickle wraps. I have all these tortillas. What are we going to do with all these tortillas? Cheese can last in the fridge. Most things can last. But like the tortillas are the problem because they expire in like April sometime. So I'm like, okay, that's not really that far away. So my idea yesterday was I'm going to make pickle wraps for Easter and the cucumber salad that I love to make that uses sour cream. It's like a dill recipe. I'm like, okay, I'm bringing something to Easter dinner for our family. We all bring something and share the meal. That's what I'm bringing because that's what I have. You cannot imagine how weird I felt in the store buying 120 tortillas. I'm like, I feel like kind of like a crazy person because I just kept pulling them off the shelf. And the salsa and the meat and all of that. It was a new experience for me. I've never really cooked that volume or bought that volume. I guess I didn't end up cooking that volume because there weren't that many people there that were going to be there in the end. But buying that many tortillas was really the funniest thing. And it was like such a tall stack in the cart. And obviously the cashier commented on it. I'm like, yep, we're feeding the full robotics team when I bought it at that time. It was a tall stack of tortillas. Never in my life have I bought that many tortillas. It was wild. Anyway, I'm sure many people have done this before, like doing it for parties or whatever. But it's the first time I had done it, so it was weird to see a giant stack of packages of tortillas almost to the top of the cart. That was wild. Anyway, okay, that was my silly story. And it was quite the adventure. But hey, I've found a use for it all. You have an amazing day. Thanks for listening. All right, bye-bye now.
it's Lauren LaRosa. Have you ever had one of those weeks where your curls are just parched? Like, no matter what you do, they are begging for moisture? Cantu heard you loud and clear with their new Ultra Moisture collection, powered by Botana oil and Jamaican black castor oil. This new line is clinically proven to help retain moisture for up to 5 days. Delivers up to 5 days of nonstop hydration, 5 whole days, y'all. The shampoo gently cleanses without stripping, and the leave-in and stylers keep curls soft, defined, and hydrated long after your wash day. Plus, it's free of sulfates, parabens, silicones, and mineral oils. If your curls have been craving real hydration, then this is it. So if your hair's curls have been so thirsty, go ahead and try that new Cantu Ultra Moisture collection. Your curls will thank you. It's available now at Walmart, Target, and Amazon, so go get it.